we literally had to push employees to participate. They were not, ready to come and sit in for the training.
Yeah.
So is it the same now also in your industry also? How is your experience, and what do you do to ensure that employees come and participate?
I think it's such a nice question, and I really want to take some time on it.
Sure. So Neha, for a shorter span in my career, I have handled T&D as a role, as one of the function, as in one of the role that I must say in HR generalist. And the challenge that I faced that time was, we literally had to push employees to participate. They were not, ready to come and sit in for the training.
Yeah.
So is it the same now also in your industry also? How is your experience, and what do you do to ensure that employees come and participate?
I think it's such a nice question, and I really want to take some time on it.
Sure.
One, I would say very candidly accept that times have changed. And yes, what you're saying is absolutely true. It did exist. Even today it exists in pockets where you have to push employees to attend workshops, attend trainings, complete those mandatory training hours. But honestly, as a very passionate L&D professional, I don't believe that's the right way to do.
Okay.
Learning should never be forced. Unless and until your company has enough incentives around learning, you need to have the very culture within your organization to create that pull factor.
Okay.
The first thing to do in that case, and while I agree that yes, the challenge exists, but the first thing that to do in this case is to link learning and development to your own personal career path.
Okay.
And that is where I think some organizations don't do well. And that's where you end up pushing people into classrooms or forcing them to complete their mandatory learning hours. I think gone are those days. There's no point in pushing an employee to complete those 48 hours or 50 hours of learning in a year's time or whatever, 6 months time, if it's not going to add any value to his or her life. Otherwise, it is just going to be on an Excel sheet maybe, or on some dashboard that's being presented to the senior leadership.
Exactly. Like I have seen organizations, Neha, wherein they make it mandatory and it is the last day. And of course, there are, some training modules which are online available, and after that they have to give some tests.
Yeah.
So they will not bother to see the module.
Yeah.
They'll just ask the answers to questions to their colleagues.
Yeah.
And it just becomes a tick mark activity.
Yeah.
And, I understand L&D professionals like you are investing their time in preparing all of this.
Yeah.
But end of the day, it doesn't help much because it is not the way how it should be, what you say?
Managed.
Executed.
In general, managed.
Correct.
I think it's really sad. And all the efforts, time, money spent in designing those modules is gone, down the drain if that's the approach that a team has taken. Honestly, the first and foremost thing, as I said, you must link it to an individual's goal plan.
Okay.
Even prior to linking it to a goal plan, have you told him or her, why are we doing this? Have you answered the question why? Imagine yourself to be a random employee, maybe working around some softwares in a company or maybe on a shop floor for that matter. And your HR telling you that, you have to complete these 4 trainings this month. So you're basically communicating itself in a fashion that it's a mandatory requirement you have to do it. But why am I supposed to do it? How is it going to help me as a professional?
Correct.
First, at least if I'm an employee in your company. And how is it going to add value to my life? Have you told me why? So if that why is not answered, you've lost the participant right there. And then it will obviously become a tick mark activity. So I think explaining the why is very important. 2, as we discussed a couple of minutes ago, the right need identification. Here's where you feel the need to push people, right? If you have not identified the needs properly, then you will end up pushing people in the classroom because they're not convinced anyway. So the first step in the entire L&D cycle has gone wrong. So I think that's where the most attention needs to be paid to. Third, have you made it convenient for your participants?
Okay.
Gone are those days where traditional classroom workshops were the only solution to your learning needs. Have you made it convenient?
Okay.
Do you have any bite-sized content Do you have any content that the person can just go through on his or her own mobile, for that matter? Is there an app-based learning available? Is there a blended learning technology available? If you have not made it convenient, then again,
one thing I didn't understand. You mentioned about blended. So what exactly?
So blended would be a combination of classroom and online trainings.
Okay.
So there could be a part of the curriculum or a part of the content that could be self-study based.
Okay.
And you don't really need a facilitator out there teaching that in a traditional classroom setup.
Okay.
But there could be a part of the content which needs to be taught in a traditional setup like that. So maybe divide your content accordingly and figure out what part could be more to do with an online approach, to a digital learning methodology, and what part would you want to cover in a classroom sort of a setting where you need a facilitator to guide, to handhold, or to teach a few things here and there, or impart that wisdom. So it's very important that you provide convenience as well. Everybody is busy. Let's accept that. And for them to integrate learning into your daily work life, all of these things matter the most. And lastly, if you've taken care of all of these things already, lastly, it's very important that your programs are sponsored by your senior leadership, right? It so shouldn't happen that L&D is operating in silos where you feel that, your people need this, but the senior leadership has no buy-in whatsoever. So maybe you've not had a good marriage between, your senior leadership and your vision. So it's very important that you take them on board and they become sponsors, they become your, they champion your programs. So if it's coming from the senior leadership's desk, it will carry more gravitas, it will carry more weightage, it will be taken more seriously by the employees.
Sure. Valid points, I think, and we all must give it a thought. The next challenge that I feel is like right now for this podcast also, I am facing a challenge in terms of people come and, they see the first thing that they'll notice is what is the duration of the video. So how does it impact L&D as a function? This reduction in attention span, I'm sure it must have affected your function as well. So how has been your experience, and most importantly, what you do to have that attention span?
It depends upon which methodology are we talking about, but let's take an example of the most common one, which is your regular classroom workshops. Now, the kind of workshops that we run here in my present organization are mostly full-day workshops, where an employee is expected to spend around 8 hours, 7 to 8 hours in a classroom setting, and then that topic is delivered in, by a facilitator. Now, here's where it becomes interesting. One, if you've taken care of the buy-in part and if the participant is himself or herself interested to be a part of that session, half the battle is won. All right. The rest of the half of the battle is that depends upon one, the quality of facilitator that you bring in. He or she needs to be a real expert and you need to have just the right person doing the right kind of job. If you falter there, then the battle is lost right there. Two, you need to ensure that there's a blend of theory and experiential learning both. So if you keep the entire format very theoretical, where somebody's standing and running slides over slides, honestly, the attention span would go off in a matter of minutes for that matter. So here's where you bring in more case study based learning. You introduce methods like group learning, peer learning, role plays, simulations, certain activities, and all of these activities with a purpose, not just for the sake of playing games or, nothing frivolous for that matter, but something that is very relevant to the topic at hand. So I think all of these methods put to practice hook the people till the end. And most importantly, adult learning comes with its own challenges. People don't want to be taught in a monologue kind of a setting. People would want to interact with you. People would want to share their problems with you. People would also want to share a bit of their solutions with you, what has worked, what has not worked in their careers. So an open platform where people can talk, can share their thoughts in a classroom setting, that keeps people hooked on till the end.
So interaction is the key probably. Okay. There is one concept called succession planning. I'm not sure if, everyone who is watching this episode is aware of it. So I would like to know from you, how do you define succession planning, and what exactly is the concept?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most crucial and in need practices in HR. To explain that in the simplest possible terms, you are ensuring that as and when your senior leadership moves out of the system, not just senior leadership, but certain more critical positions in your organization, they move out of the system for whatever reasons. They could either retire, or they may choose to go their own way, choosing their own career paths. You have somebody already prepped up within the system or within the organization who is almost ready to take up that position. If not fully ready, at least almost ready to take up that position. So that entire exercise is nothing but succession planning, ensuring that you have a successor available for the critical positions in your organization. That entire process starts with identifying the positions first.
Correct.
And let's face it, if you have 100 positions in your company, not all are going to be critical.
Absolutely.
Critical are those who directly impact your business. If there's a problem there, it will be a bottleneck for the business. It'll impact the revenue. It'll impact the overall engagement. It'll impact the overall outcome of the business. So identify those critical positions first. Once you've identified, also figure out how do you tap people who are your high potentials. Now, there are various methodologies, of course, involved in identifying the high potentials in your company. It cannot be only based on somebody's judgment. I mean, I may feel that my team member is a high potential. I may or may not be right. So there are scientific tools, methodologies available to validate that. There could be assessment centers. There could be structured behavioral interviews. You could also have certain career aspiration discussions with the person himself or herself. Otherwise, you'll end up planning a career for them and they are not interested. So there needs to be a coherence there as well. There could be psychometric assessments in place, performance evaluation in place, and various other tools and techniques to ensure that you have identified the right kind of people as high potentials. And basis that, then you zero down on your successors for these critical positions. Here's where L&D team plays a big role, where your job as L&D professional would be to ensure that you design a good succession plan for these identified high potentials and ensure that the plan progresses as per your, as per the business needs. So the entire journey is designed and administered both by the L&D team.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. Point number one is, if you have identified someone who is having that potential, so do we disclose it to him that, okay, we have identified you as a, probably so-and-so, or maybe that position, if need be, we may utilize you for that particular position. Do we disclose it, or is it done like quietly, or how is it?
Yeah, it's a good question. That would differ per company.
Okay.
And that is extremely crucial. The way you communicate and what you communicate would change the entire game here. So personally, I would prefer not disclosing it like entirely, where you tell the person that, hey, you may replace a particular individual whenever time comes. But it's important to make the person know that you are a high potential and the company is taking efforts to build your skill sets, to help you hone your competencies and to help you grow in the ladder. So you are showing a career progression to him or her, and I think that should be enough. And it's also important to keep this person engaged throughout their learning journey, because it so shouldn't happen that you're prepping the person for a particular role and then he or she thinks otherwise.
Exactly. That is what I was thinking of, because if organization is taking effort, investing in that particular resource because he has that potential. And in today's world, we know the attrition percentage that we are having, and business is such volatile nowadays. Like every other day there is something or else is happening. So in this scenario, it becomes very challenging to implement succession planning.
Yeah, it is important. Challenging, but again, I think you can't take away the significance of the activity. So it's very important that you do it. Because in the absence of succession planning, you will end up using your creamiest talent, and then a talent deficit, I think, can literally make or break an organization.
Right.
I mean, the right set of talent will make an organization, and the absence of it would break an organization.
Understood.
So I think that's very, very important that you do it.
So, for example, even if we go wrong in succession planning,
Yeah.
we'll at least have something rather than having nothing, rather than having no succession planning at all. Even if
Yeah.
there could be 1 or 2 cases wherein, we have invested and, resources going away.
Yeah.
But still,
And that's natural.
That's natural.
That's okay. And, you cannot ever stop people from choosing their own career paths, making their own personal choices. You can never stop them. No matter how shiny your overall plan is or how value adding your plan is, there would be somebody who would think otherwise, and who would think that, there's a better opportunity elsewhere that I would want to pursue, and so be it. It's okay. Right. So you can never achieve 100% success rate there, but it's important to start small, but start. That's very important.
Great. How the role progresses over the period of time. So
Yeah.
now you're heading L&D. So how the progression happened over the period of time?
It takes a lot of expertise. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of knowledge, wisdom to be a facilitator.
If we are talking about training need identification, you have 20 different needs who are your participants. So how do you work on it then?